Okay, let's watch this video. Alan Wake 2 is very good. The review from First Gaming. Let's see what's cooking here.
You know, generally, I'm not really inclined towards narrative driven games. They're just not my preference. Typically, I want gameplay, the physical, mechanical act of playing, normally while engaged with combat. Give me a good gameplay loop at the forefront of my experience, and I'm happy for the most part. But every so often, a game comes along where I do find myself wrapped up with the story, and Alan Wake 2 is one of those games. And it's a good
Okay.
thing too, because while combat is present and fairly well executed, it absolutely takes a back seat to everything else. This is a game to be played for the sake of its narrative, not in spite of it. And it's worth playing as Remedy absolutely delivers. They've crafted a world that feels authentic, like a real living, breathing place if reality were a bit more supernatural. And it is
Okay, so
oozing
it's
with
not about the
atmosphere,
gameplay.
filled with interesting characters, and all tied together with some superb visuals. This is just a really pretty looking game. The entire thing is quite immersive as well as you explore the environment, interacting with objects, speaking with NPCs, and searching for clues to bypass obstacles or solve the many mysteries that advance the story. If you have ever wanted to play a game that simultaneously makes you feel like a true crime detective hot on the trail, and as if you're living in some sort of nightmare simulation teetering on
All right, this
psychotic
game gives you the two perspectives. That's true. I remember. They
break,
they,
well,
they, they said that in when when they announced the game.
Alan Wake 2 has absolutely got you covered here. Structurally, the game is broken up into two main categories, or
Okay.
rather, two main characters, as you take turns alternating control between the game's namesake, Alan Wake, and the newly introduced Saga Anderson. But these aren't just two different story perspectives for you to manually experience and play through. No, they almost act as entirely different games as well. Starting with Saga
Oh,
Anderson. She's an
okay.
FBI agent who is sent to some small backwoods town to solve the case of a mysterious, gruesome killing. This takes you through several key locations throughout rural Washington, a national park at the foot of a lake, a tiny town full of shops, diners, and municipal buildings, and a fishing village on the outskirts of a local
So I
theme park.
wonder, is she like the normal character, and you play Alan Wake for the fantasy? She's more like the normal horror perspective. I don't know how to say this like that. And Alan is like the crazy bad shit. Is that how it is?
Each of these areas fully realized and densely packed with things for you to see and discover, all of which are tied into the mystery that you are there to solve. And when I say dense, I mean dense. You can, and I have, spent several hours in a single location. Adding to that are the fact that
Oh
there are
wow.
numerous Metroidvania-like elements, as in you'll discover tools and other things that let you bypass obstacles later on as you revisit those past levels. You will be coming to and from several key locations as you continue to unravel the mystery. Now, while playing as Saga, you have got access to numerous systems and mechanics that really lean into her occupation. For example,
So I
while you
guess
were
each one of them have a different set of skills and abilities that they can use. I imagine.
exploring each of these handcrafted locations, speaking with the locals, and poking around the environment for clues, you will slowly start putting the pieces together for whatever part of the mystery you happen to be solving at the time. So you could
Oh
be strolling
wow.
down the street and you might walk by a flyer that reveals some key details for an upcoming event. You could spark up a conversation with a townie who would then lead you to the location of a key that you were searching for. Maybe poking around in an office, you might find scribbled onto some notepad the code to a safe which has valuable information and items
Oh
inside.
look at
Or
that.
checking up on a computer, you could pull up some emails that reveal a relevant relationship between characters that you were previously unaware of. While playing Saga, the environment around you is just littered with all sorts of clues, revealing the answers to mysteries and puzzles, and you piece all of this together in what is called the Mind Place. This is Saga's mental projection of a case
What?
solving room where you have
Okay, no, she has a little bit of. Let's hear what he says.
access to many useful tools. There is the
Okay.
case board, which is where you piece all of those discovered clues together, trying to make sense of them and unravel whatever many elements they
I
reveal
wonder,
to
is she looking for Alan Wake, and she got herself um in all of this like problem because he was looking for him or something like that.
case. There are a lot of cases as well, which you can freely swap between as you find clues for each of them, all tied either into the main narrative and its various players, or into some additional side stories as well. There's a map wall with one map for each location you visit, and you'll actually have to physically
Valhalla.
find these maps in the world before gaining access to them on the board. But then once you do, it gives you a pretty detailed overview of that particular area and all important points of interest. A profiling table where Saga analyzes individual characters based on the things that she's learned. This is sort of like opening up a door into their mind in which they reveal new information and give you new clues that help advance her investigation. The Mind Place
Hmm.
also acts as sort of a catalog for various collectibles that you've acquired.
For
Like
the moment, everything from her gameplay is normal. No horror, fantasy, or anything like that. Monsters. For the moment. Let's see what he says.
manuscript pages from Alan Wake's writings, which do play into the story and world, a boombox that will store any songs or radio broadcast you've overheard, and then even a television
Okay.
set that will replay programs you've seen, which mostly consist of these silly live action commercials that two local celebrities put together for their amusement park slash coffee bean roasting operation. Quite the joint thing they got going there. But yeah, the Mind Place, as it's called, or basically your mentally projected case room. This is where you do all of the true detective work after you've scrounged up all of the pieces and clues when you're just going around exploring each of the places. But beyond having case clues, the world
Oh.
is also full of tons of other things, items, puzzles, characters, and of course enemies. So let's go through
Oh,
some of
what the
that. There are a variety of puzzle types, all of which either task you with finding a key, figuring out a code, or solving some sort of a riddle. Now there are puzzles to unlock weapon cases. You start off with a pistol, but you will find other more powerful
Oh
weapons
no.
as
Oh
you
wait.
progress. There's
Now
also
he's
ones for charms, which you get by solving these children's riddles. You have to read the riddle.
Alan Wake's gameplay is gonna be like that shit is like mushrooms times 100. You know, there's no way his gameplay is chill. That is why you play the chill part with um the police with her. I forgot her name. Okay, with her.
And then place these little figurines that you find on corresponding pictures that match up and make the most sense for whatever the story is the riddle tells. These charms that you get as a result provide some pretty strong buffs, doing things like increasing your health, allowing you to more easily stagger enemies, or granting more resources while you are looting. There's also lunch boxes. This is actually the main form of power progression for Saga. You will find lunch
Saga.
boxes in the world,
That's
and
her
they give
name,
you a
right?
resource which is used for upgrading your weapons. These boxes are normally off the beaten path, but will be marked with these little colorful objects placed in the world nearby. And then you can spend this resource at an upgrade station in the Mind Place, which gives you some nice passive perks for each of the game's weapon types. You'll also find safe rooms that have inside storage containers. This basically acts just like a storage outside of your
There's a
main
quick save over
inventory.
there.
And then this
That's
also
cool.
allows for quick and manual saves. I did find it a bit funny that quick and manual saves are in the same place, making those quick saves not as quick, really, because you can't do them out on the go. You actually have to do them in one of these safe rooms. And yeah, you'll discover plenty of other containers while exploring. These will carry useful, mostly combat-related items, ammunition, healing sources, light sources, and explosives. There are also these locked cultist stashes, which are sort of like those, but better. Each of these do have a different
Oh,
requirement
look at
to open.
that.
Again, it's going to be solving a riddle, figuring out a code, or finding a key. But
That's
once
a
you gain
nice,
access,
interesting
these will
puzzle.
contain larger numbers, a higher quantity, and better versions of those combat items. Speaking
Oh,
of
and
which, let's
you have the answer around you in the zone. That's cool.
talk a bit about combat. As I said, I think it's
Okay.
fairly well done in this game, but it's definitely
It's
not at
not
the
a
forefront.
focus. Yeah, it's not
Nevertheless,
a
let's talk
gameplay
about it.
focus
It is
game.
simple but well executed. So you got a few options to take on the game's various threats, guns and flashlights being your two primary tools. It is a pretty straightforward third-person aim-down sights system. The camera comes in nice and tight right behind your character, and aiming has a bit of sway to it, both of which make for rather tense engagements, especially against any enemies charging towards you. You are going to be limited on ammo, particularly while on normal and hard difficulty, so you will want to aim carefully, targeting the head
The
or
hard
weak.
difficulty gotta be so fun. I like playing this game on hard difficulty. They're always super fun. It gives that extra like a feeling that you cannot waste resources. I love that.
spots, but first making sure to remove any protections, because some enemies will be covered in darkness shields, which must be burned away before you can deal damage. You do this by aiming and then focusing the beam on your flashlight, which will melt the shield away. Once that is gone, they will be
Ah,
staggered,
interesting
leaving them
mechanic.
vulnerable to being shot. Beyond aiming for the head, some enemies will also have these bright glowing weak points you can
Whoa,
shoot,
it
which lets you
duplicated.
deal increased damage. And if anyone does get close, you have a fairly effective dodge, which, if perfectly timed, causes the enemy to even stumble and fall. And you'll need to use this because if enemies get too close, beyond, yes, hitting you, they can also follow up with a grapple, then repeatedly striking you, dealing a ton of damage. You don't want this to happen. But again, the
Okay.
dodge can pretty much be spammed with a slight animation delay in between, and it's effective most of the time. So you aim your light to focus and melt down shields and or stagger. You fire away with your pistol, shotgun, rifle, or crossbow, and if they get too close, you better dodge or else. Other combat-related tools include throwables like explosives and flares. You
Damn,
also
that was
have
fast.
healing items, various
Is that a
sorts
wolf?
of these that will heal
Yeah.
different amounts with longer animation times. And you've got 8 quick slots which you can bind any of these various things to: the weapons, the throwables, and the healing items. In terms of who you will be fighting, well, there are a mix of enemy types, specifically while
I wonder
playing
if
as
what was her name? Saga? Sega? I wonder if she's the main character of the game. Like you play, I don't know, 75% of the game with her. That'll be interesting. Hmm.
Saga, you will come across various Taken, which are cult members and town members who have a touch of the supernatural. Each of these require different strategies for you to take on in combat. You've got cultists who wear these deer masks. If you shoot them away, it makes them more vulnerable to headshots. The slashers, who will charge at you with these frenzied melee attacks. Bruisers are slow and strong, sort of lumbering types, typically wielding big two-handed weapons. You've got throwers who keep a distance, almost
Oh,
blink
shit.
around you, coming from one direction to the next very, very quickly, and then they'll throw axes that you'll need to dodge. And you've even got some dangerous wildlife in the form of these wolves who will circle around you before charging in, typically from a hidden location. Lunging forward, make sure you dodge those as well. One of the most interesting things, or funniest things, that I thought when playing this game is that a lot of these Taken enemies will randomly shout stuff that's just
Taken.
like completely off kilter.
That's
and
a good
often
way to call
hilarious
them.
'cause you're not expecting it. I had one
That reminds me of Destiny Taken enemies. And the Taken King with Crota was the son. Oryx, I'm pretty sure was the name of the Taken King.
shadow Taken character
I miss
yelling
Destiny.
shitty pastrami sandwich after
I
making
heard
some gurgling.
I also heard the new shit with Bungie that they are delaying the game on the new marathon game for 2025. Shit like that. Like it's going there's a little bit of trouble in there with Sony too, I think. And I don't know. I just saw some shit on Twitter. So not the whole I didn't investigate. So yeah. But I heard something bad that is happening with them with the new expansion for Destiny 2 and the new marathon game. That is
Noises.
delayed.
Like,
They got
it's
delayed,
just the,
both of
it's the
them.
weirdest stuff, but I actually quite like it. And as I said, as well executed as the combat is, I need to really emphasize that this is not a combat focused game. It is there, it is well done, and you will do it. And when you do, it feels good enough, but it is only a fraction of the time. I would put my estimate between 10 to 20%, maybe
Oh,
not
wow.
even as high as 20. Somewhere sub 20% of your time will be spent in combat. That is only a rough estimate, but I think it's probably closer to like 10% of your time spent in combat. Most of your time,
I
you
mean,
will
but
not be
I
fighting
heard that
things.
it's a good horror game. So I guess there's a lot of non-combat horror moments that you get.
Because that's not what the main focus
Maybe
of the
running
game is.
away or
In
something
fact,
like that.
generally, what like the gameplay loop looks like when you're playing as Saga is something like this:
Saga,
walk around,
okay.
explore the environment, fight the occasional enemy that does show up, but otherwise, you're looting containers, you're solving puzzles, and you're picking up new clues either by talking with NPCs or actually finding the physical clues around you. Also, I should note that these clues will be marked with indicators, these little white dots that appear when you're within a few meters. They're pretty hard to miss, and if you do happen to miss miss one, they will then be marked on your map so you can come back to it later. And then with the clues
Oh,
in
okay.
hands, you can freely enter that mind space at any time and start piecing the puzzles together. Once you have enough clues for a line of questioning, Saga will then come up with a conclusion, which basically then updates your quest log, showing you what your next step is, what your next objective
Oh,
is. And
wow.
then you
Okay.
do it again. You either head to a newly targeted area, you retrace your step backwards with some fresh information, or maybe that Metroidvania stuff comes into play and you have a new tool or access to a code or lockbox lets you progress to an area that you couldn't in the past. And you're doing all of this in service of moving forward and progressing the story. But all of that, everything we talked about, is just from the perspective of Saga Anderson. On top
Okay.
of that, there is Alan Wake. Now, while the moment to moment gameplay and movement around the world, while that is the same between the two, playing as Alan also
Oh,
has you
shit.
engaging with entirely new and different systems and mechanics. For
So
one, while Saga is tracking
they decided to divide the game in two parts, one with Saga and one with Alan Wake. That is cool. I like that.
down
There
clues
is a
in rural
reason to change between each other. I like that.
Washington, Alan is exploring what is called the Dark Place, this dreamlike
Ooh.
alternate reality version of New York City, blending the actual place as Alan knows it with stories that he's written about it. And with this comes its own set of features. So you've got this thing called the Angel Lamp. You basically will pull light from specific sources and then it puts it into the lamp that you carry on your hip, adding a charge to it. And then you can take that light, move to another location, and put it in there. Now, what this actually means in actuality is you're transferring light from one location to the other
Wow.
and it opens up new paths. An
Okay.
area will be blocked. You find a light source, pull the light into your angel lamp, bring it over here, put it somewhere else, and all of a sudden the path is open. And there is a lot of these blocked paths that need to be opened up with the angel lamp. There's also, for enemies, shadows instead of taken. So these are ghostly figures that wander around in the dark place. You can actually avoid them. There's almost like stealth-like mechanics. Not really. There's not like a stealth meter, but if you move
Okay.
slowly, if you don't get too close, if you keep quiet, you can avoid combat with these shadows. Now, aside
Oh
from
my god,
fighting off any
he's getting
shadow
fucked.
hostiles and shadow heavies, Alan
Oh hell
is
no.
also constantly dealing with this threat of the darkness. I don't want to spoil anything here though, so I'm not going to provide any additional detail, but there's like other supernatural threats that you're dealing with besides these shadow creatures. Also, while playing as
Okay.
Alan, you have these things called echoes, these floating white and black orbs that, if you
Wow.
line up properly together, will reveal visions and new plot elements,
Oh,
which then can be
interesting puzzle.
added into the plot board, which brings us to the writer's room. So Alan is a writer, whereas Saga Anderson is an FBI detective and she has the mind space that is her case room. Alan has a writer's room, and in the writer's room you are in control, because a big part of this story and how it all plays out is that the things that Alan is writing about
They become
impact
real.
the world. So with this plot board, there will be
I
a lot of
remember
key
that.
moments while you're playing through the story as Alan, where they basically give you like a choose your own adventure choice. You can pick and choose what comes next, and how you write out the plot will then
Is this game does this game have replayability? Can you replay this game and get different missions and shit like that?
physically change what happens within the world. It materializes before you. So you might
Hmm.
stumble across a room, and then at which point, depending on
Whoa.
the various plot points that you have revealed, you get to choose what happens. Maybe you decide it's the location of some mystical cult ritual, or the scene of some human crime. Someone attacked another person or set a fire or whatever. Or it could be the meeting place for a secret society where new information is revealed. Again, it's sort of like a choose your own adventure thing. You have got the option of how you want the world to form based on the story that you're writing. Also, for Alan, he has got words of power instead of these basic weapon upgrades through these lunch boxes that Saga
Look at
Anderson
that.
has. You will find with your flashlight, while spotting on the wall, you'll find these circular words written, and then once you basically unlock it, this gives you points for upgrades to improve your weapon as well as various aspects of your character for combat and otherwise.
passive.
And these two
That's
things
cool.
are interwoven. You alternate between playing Saga Anderson in Washington and playing Alan Wake in
I
the
hope
Dark
I
Place.
hope
And
I
these
hope the times you change make sense. It's not like you are in the middle of a quest with one of them and immediately changes to the other one. I hope that doesn't happen. It's not like that. Hope it actually makes sense for the story that you're changing between each other. one and
stories
the
go
other.
back and forth. In fact, eventually you get to a point in the game where at that point forward, you can choose who you play as when. So after going back and forth
Okay.
for a little bit, you can choose to continue playing as Saga or continue playing as Alan or keep bouncing back and forth. I'll tell you personally, I really enjoyed the mechanics and the layout and the world structure of Saga's side of the story, even more so than Alan's. And I spent initially my time focused on continuing out that plot before moving on to the rest of Alan's. And I know I haven't talked much specifics about the story and the narrative and how it plays out. I'll just tell you, it is a really interesting blending of reality with storytelling. What is real? What is fiction? What is Alan's writing? What is actually happening in the real world? Alan, as he writes his story, plays out these events. This changes and impacts the world. And not only does that impact Alan in the dark place, but it also weaves its way into the reality of Saga Anderson,
Oh
as well
wow.
as the story of Saga Anderson. Change the story, change reality, the dark place, the scratch, the clicker, all sorts of things, which will make a whole lot more sense when you actually go through and play the game. But like I said at the very beginning, I typically am not inclined to enjoy story-driven games. In most cases, when
I
I'm
I
playing a
I
game, I
love
find the cutscenes and character
story
dialogue
games.
tedious and something that I want to skip to get
I
back into
do.
the action, to get back into playing. But my experience with Alan Wake 2 has been the exact opposite. I think they've done such a great job of building out this world and creating an entertaining story that it's actually the combat portions, the combat sequences that I find myself trying to rush through to get back to unraveling the mystery and advancing the narrative. It's sort of been like finding a new TV series that you didn't know about and you just want to binge watch to find out what's happened next and get to the conclusion. This is a very rare occurrence for me in gaming, so I have to say, well done, Remedy, because I think Alan Wake 2 is fantastic. Good job. I really enjoy this game and I highly recommend it if you've liked at all anything that you've heard about it here in this video. That's going to do it for me today. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed watching it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
Okay. Good video. Force gaming, always good videos. Really well explained. Everything. I saw the like the reviews. This game had tens, everything. 5 out of 5. People love this game. The review, you didn't mention the performance state of the game, but it was pleasant listening to. Oh, it doesn't have a good performance. Performance, really? I mean, they can fix that. It's okay, but it looks good. It's good. I wanna play that. Wanna play this game.